I was good at math and everyone told me that I should be an accountant. I'm really glad I did not listen because I'd be a terrible accountant. I didn't even know what developers were. I'm like, that's the seat I want to be in. I don't think many people grow up thinking like, yeah, I want to be in the self-storage industry. It's not something that is on anyone's radar. You go to the multifamily conferences and a lot of guys in suits and a lot of institutional equity. Then I went to a self-storage conference. And at that time, there was still a lot of people in shorts and Hawaiian shirts at that time at those conferences. One of the big things that happened in the storage industry in 2019 to 2020, COVID ended up being like one of the best things that ever happened to the storage industry. Really challenging for a while, but it created so much demand. Studying architecture, you get to design whatever you want to do. You get to kind of like look at a piece of property and turn it into whatever you want it to be. Turns out when you're an architect, you've got clients, and the clients are developers, and they have a very different vision.
They have a lot of opinions and visions and ideas that go along with that. Welcome to another episode of the CashFlow Quest. Today we have a special guest with us, GP of Frontera Real Estate and Bryan Grissinger. Thank you. Nice to have you today. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, cool.
Likewise.
Let's have some fun.
So main point of focus is self-storage for you guys now. And if you want to go back into your story and your origin.
Yeah, so we are 100% focused on self-storage. Deviated from that a little bit and we can talk about that. But yeah, as of right now, that's our sole focus. So kind of back up a little bit and tell you where I got started. So I grew up in the Chicago area, grew up in the western suburbs of Chicago. Had no exposure at all to real estate as a kid. So my dad was a pilot, my mom was a teacher. I was good at math and everyone told me that I should be an accountant. And I'm really glad I did not listen because I'd be a terrible accountant. I got lucky in high school. I took a drafting class and got exposed to that. And I fell in love with, at the time, architecture. And that's the direction I wanted to go. Like I loved designing buildings, working on that. I thought this was a cool thing. And that was my first exposure at all to like something real estate related. So then going into college, I was like, okay, kind of weighing two options. I'm either going to study architecture or aviation. Again, my brother and dad were both pilots, and that was kind of the way I thought it was going to go. I ended up getting into Notre Dame, which was my dream school, and they didn't have an aviation program, so it cleared the path for architecture for me. So that kind of limited that. So I kept aviation as more of a hobby. I did that for a little while, took flight lessons and stuff with my brother.
Notre Dame has a beautiful campus.
Beautiful campus, yes.
Beautiful campus. I've been to an SC Notre Dame game there. Really fun.
Who are you rooting for?
I was an SC fan. Sorry.
Okay. There's a lot of you guys out here in San Diego. So
yes, there is.
So studied architecture at Notre Dame, loved it, loved studying architecture. And thankfully I did an internship and after my third year and realized that I did not like the internship. I did not like practicing architecture and decided to do one more internship just to kind of confirm. I did that one. I think I liked that internship even less than the first one.
Okay.
So luckily I was still at a point where I was able to transition and take a lot of business classes and start thinking about, okay, how do I get out of this? And one of the things I didn't like about architecture that I struggled with a little bit is when you're studying architecture, you get to design whatever you want to do. You get to kind of like look at a piece of property and turn it into whatever you want it to be. Turns out when you're an architect, you've got clients, and the clients are developers, and they have a very different vision.
They have a lot of opinions and visions and ideas that go along with that.
And cost control.
Yeah.
Which really moves the needle on design.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. So as I learned that, I was like, okay, that's where I want to be, right? Like I didn't even know what developers were. I'm like, that's the seat I want to be in. And I started trying to figure out what that looked like. Unfortunately, that was in the fall of 2007. So right as things were falling apart in the economy. And as it was interesting because I met with a number of developers around that time to try to get an idea of what the opportunities were. And everything hadn't fallen apart yet, but like the writing was on the wall. These guys were living it every day. And they were like, you should be thinking about something else. So, gave me the opportunity to rethink that a little bit, kind of focus on where I should go. And one of the things that people told me is get experience in construction. So I was like, okay. So I found a general contractor in Chicago and ended up going and working for them for a few years, which I got very lucky with that. I'd heard of this group called Walsh Construction that was based in Chicago. I didn't really know anything about them. So I was like, well, that could be a good place to start. Let me just call him. So I called to talk to Matt Walsh, who was the owner of the company. And I had no idea at the time that it was a multi-billion-dollar company, the thousands of employees. And just by luck, I got him. I got passed through a couple different receptionists and ended up getting him on the phone.
Wow.
And he's like, hey, come on out. Like, come check out what we do. And he invited me out. I went to their office, ended up spending the whole day there, and they offered me a job. And it kind of totally transitioned. It was a perfect place for me to start my career and work for a few years and get some experience and learn the construction side of the industry. But then I got to the point where I was like, okay, now it's time to revisit development. And that was in 2011. Chicago was still pretty dead as a market. There were no tower cranes, or maybe one tower crane up in the city at that time. There wasn't a lot of capital chasing Chicago as a market to develop in. So I had to start thinking about other places. And I looked at where is there active construction going on and where is there money chasing development. Mm-hmm. Southern California, check the boxes, right? And kind of made the decision on a whim to move out here. I just gotten married, so my wife and I kind of picked up and left, and it was good because I was at a transition point in my career, and she's a nurse, and I give her a lot of credit for just kind of jumping right on board right away and saying, yeah, let's do it. And she was able to find a job out here pretty easily. I did grad school at the real estate program at University of San Diego. That was kind of how we picked San Diego of all places to end up. And then the thought was to go back. And then we decided to stay for a couple of years, and we decided like, oh, we'll definitely go back before we've got kids. And it got to the point in 2015 or so, and I was like, okay, my wife was newly pregnant, and I was at the point where I was thinking about starting a business. Like, we need to pick a location. Like, are we going back or not? And that conversation lasted about 30 seconds, and we made San Diego home.
A tough place to leave, especially when you got those, the winters in Chicago are cold. And here you get some cold days, but not even comparison to cold winters in Chicago.
So that's what brought us out to San Diego. And then I ended up working while I was in grad school at a private equity shop here in town that I worked there for about 5 years. And that was my first real exposure to real estate development and acquisitions and doing some asset management, and got exposure to multiple different asset classes, different types of investment, and just a little bit of everything, which was great.
That's awesome. And that's how you really figure out what you like, what you don't like, what piece of it you want to really be more involved in and focus on.
Yep.
So then you focused on, so then you had all of these, multi-commercial, all these different asset classes, and you liked storage. You ended up going into the direction of storage.
I don't think many people grow up thinking like, I want to be in the self-storage industry. It's not something that is on anyone's radar. It certainly wasn't on mine, right? Like,
same especially with mobile home parks.
Totally.
Yeah, right?
It's very, we agree.
For me, there were a few things that went into it. And I think one of the things that kind of drives a lot of decisions, and is I think I'm relatively conservative in the way that I underwrite and think about things. And I think going back a little bit, so my dad was a pilot for United Airlines. So they went into bankruptcy shortly after, the year after September 11th. So at that time, that wiped out his pension, 401k, a lot of those things just evaporated overnight, right? So, and my dad was a big guy of like pushing, like, you go work for a company, you work there your whole career. And I saw that go down. And then he ended up leaving there and starting his own business in like end of 2006 is like kind of his like second career. Terrible timing, recession hits, and struggled to ever get that off the ground. So I watched that happen. And I think that was part of what pushed me to having a more entrepreneurial mindset. Like, I don't want to rely on another business or someone else to be able to do it. Like, I want to try to find a way to do it myself. And then when it came to choosing which asset class, I had some exposure to multiple different things. And one of the things I saw during kind of the tail end of the recession was I was managing a portfolio of office and retail properties. And for those properties, you rely on someone else's business to be successful for your business to be successful, right? Like, you're leasing a space to another business that you don't control what they're doing and how they're doing. Mm-hmm. You can look for credit tenants and different things like that, but like, they don't have control. So coming out of that and managing those assets was like, okay, I want to be in an asset class where I can control the operations, where I can not just own the real estate, but run the business that's there. And that kind of narrows it down to a few. I mean, you got senior housings like that, mobile home parks to a degree is like that. You have heavy operations, hospitality, self-storage. And then it was when I was really kind of making that choice for the business was 2015. And at that time, everyone thought a recession was coming in 2017. It was like, okay, all the 10-year debt that was done in 2006, 2007 is coming due. Mm-hmm. Asset values aren't going to support it. There's going to be a massive amount of defaults and probably another recession. Obviously, that didn't happen. Asset values increased and kind of bailed a lot of bad deals out at that time. And people there was some luck and some skill involved in that, right? Mm-hmm. But when I was looking, I was like, okay, what weathered the Great Recession the best? And storage was among the top assets during that time frame as far as lowest delinquencies for CMBS debt and a lot of other factors. So to me, it was like, all right, that's kind of a good way to hedge my bet. Even if things go poorly in the economy, I'm in an asset class that can weather it and I can figure it out. So that was one of the aspects of it. And the other one was just the inefficiencies I saw in the space. So I was doing a lot of multifamily, and you go to the multifamily conferences and a lot of guys in suits and a lot of institutional equity and really high performing assets, a lot of efficiencies in that space.
Yeah.
Then I went to a self-storage conference. And at that time, that was starting to happen, but there was still a lot of people in shorts and Hawaiian shirts at that time at those conferences. And there were a lot of small mom and pop operators running these businesses. And it's like, okay, there's more of an opportunity here to take advantage of this and kind of ride the wave up. And
just because we're on it. So has it changed?
Yeah. Yes, quite a bit. So
you see more blue suits, the sea of blue.
There's a lot more suits at the storage conferences these days.
Yeah.
You still see the guys in their shorts and Hawaiian shirts. They just have several $100 million portfolios now.
Right.
Because the space.
We have a similar in the mobile home park conferences. There didn't used to be a lot of guys in suits, but now there's more. But then you still have your, casual dressers that are owners or major operators, and you can point them out pretty quickly.
But it's nice too, right? It's because
it's a small world.
It is.
And it's a small world. You get to know people, but because it's not as sexy of an asset class.
Yeah.
You get rid of a lot of the big egos that you run into a lot of other places in real estate. So it's nice not to have that.
It is.
And
the same way.
Yeah.
We have a lot of friendly competitors, people that are competitors that I talk to all the time and are close friends, and we compare notes on operations and things like that. And it's not as cutthroat as some other areas. And I really appreciate that about the space.
Totally. Yeah.
And you get to know some of the people that are logical buyers and or sellers.
And learn from them
Absolutely.
too. You learn from just having casual conversations with them and seeing what they're doing and how they strategize. And
we just bought a Texas deal from some friends in the industry and learned a ton.
Yeah.
And they're doing all these auxiliary charges on their top line with like pet fees, and they do an indemnification waiver insurance thing with residents, because our number one issue as residents is liability risk. And so they do like this indemnification thing. They have like $100,000 of top line auxiliary charges on one deal.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, where were we on that?
Yeah.
So, maybe we don't choose to use them all across the board, across the portfolio, but we're going to definitely use a handful.
There's nuggets in there that you learn. And
it makes sense. And you have to look at that in your business. Like, does that make sense for you? Like, because some of those come with reputational risk and other things. I mean, that's something we're always thinking about when it comes to rental increases and other like even admin fees, tenant insurance. Those are things that are big in our industry. We need to always think about how you implement them.
Yeah.
And regulatory, like jumping state lines, it can be different. How to implement that.
Yeah.
Well, you guys in storage have the aspect of like someone abandons a unit. You got to go through an abandonment process, probably of some sort, and get rid of the things that are stored in there. And
storage wars brought our industry front and center for a while. We did film it at one of our properties once.
Did you really?
Years ago.
Oh,
cool. That's kind of fallen. Now everything's gone to online auctions.
Okay, so how quickly? Now we're just having fun here. How quickly can you evict somebody for non-payment in storage, roughly?
It's depends a little bit on where you are, and there's some process, but 2 to 3 months.
Okay,
but usually people hold on to it a little bit longer. I mean, it depends. If the person's completely not talking to you,
roughly.
That's
700.
No, I mean,
400.
Because we have properties.
Yeah, it's probably
from like we've got a property in Sonoma, and we've got a property in Bakersfield, and we've got a property in Albuquerque, right? big variances.
So in
And
California,
we've got 5x5s up to 10x40s, right? So a 10x10 is your most common size.
Okay.
And those rent on the low end for about $100 a month, on the high end for like $350 a month.
Okay.
But we'll have some larger units that will go for like $600-700.
Oh,
Okay.
man. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm just getting all fired up over here. So 5 foot square, 10 foot square. I see these new ones popping up all over, and they're AC'd and they look really nice. I mean,
the temperature controlled, I think, is a big component.
like people rent these little rooms.
So we're building in San Diego and Kearney Mesa right now. We're putting 1,500 units on a 1.2 acre site. So we're doing 6 stories, mostly like 5x10 is our average unit size there. Because in that stretch
50 square feet.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So it's a closet.
Yeah.
But if you look at what's happening around there, within a couple miles, there's 5,000 apartments getting built. When people are building apartments now, they're building, the average square foot is like 500-600 square feet for some of these. They don't have any storage space. They'll put their bikes, their camping equipment,
because
surfboard.
They just don't have the storage in their apartment or where they're living.
Exactly. So in urban areas like San Diego, that's the way people are using storage.
Yeah.
But even our properties in Sonoma, and we're getting ready to build another one in Napa, that's really more of a rural area. You think of it as a tourism, but it's a rural farming community for the most part.
I've heard good things about like the Napa and Sonoma and all that area. So is that a point of focus for you guys?
You know, it wasn't, but what tends to happen, and this happens to us over and over again, once we do one deal somewhere, then other opportunities present themselves, right? Yep. So we did one deal in New Mexico, and we've got a second one in escrow. We did a deal in Lancaster. We got another one coming. We did the deal in Sonoma, and we got another one in Sonoma, and now we got another one in Napa. And like once you learn the area, especially on the development side, so I guess this is an interesting pivot a little bit. Like you guys don't do much in California because of regulations primarily, right?
Correct.
And probably some other reasons. I love working in California.
Oh, amen.
Because the biggest risk to our business is oversupply.
Yeah.
So when I look at a market like Phoenix, it's very easy to build there. So a lot of people are developing. And so I could have a great project, but if 2 people build across the street from me because they see that I'm having success, all of a sudden my numbers go way down. Mm-hmm. I'm protected in California.
It's
from
harder
that.
to build.
It was much harder to build. So now that we've learned how to do it, and I think that's one of our specialties is difficult entitlements. I mean, there's times when I'm beating my head against the wall and I'm wondering why I do it, but
then
once you figure it out,
there and money's real.
Yeah. And so so Napa, that's the one we're entitling right now. And there's, we have to mitigate wetlands with the Army Corps of Engineers. There's a rare hawk in the area that we have to create like foraging area for it. There's rare plants. There's like all these different steps. And when you first look at it, it seems like insurmountable, but then as you start to kind of slowly chip away, it's like, okay, we can get this done. We can get this done. We can get this done. And it'll take us 3 years before we even start construction. But you look out 7 years and that asset is way more valuable than the other stuff in our portfolio because we took all those steps.
Okay.
So that way we did the project in Sonoma, learned the market, got comfortable with it. It's like, okay, now we can do another one. And that way, when that opportunity presented itself, it was easier for us to jump right in. So we haven't like specifically targeted that area, but we know the demographics. We know we're in lease up there. So we know what sizes people want. We have real time demand information so we can build the right product, the right unit mix, things like that.
Yeah. So how do you guys do that? Like if you're looking for a project or an area to go into, are there certain, pieces of information or stats that you
demographics,
target?
population?
Yeah, it's triangulating a lot of different data points, right? So the big metric that the industry uses is square feet of storage per capita.
Okay.
It is a very imperfect a way to measure demand, but it's a good gut check, right? So we always, that's where we start. It's like how much square feet per capita is there in this market? So then you have an idea of how much supply there is. Then you got to figure out demand. And by demand, we're looking at the properties in the area. What are their occupancies? What are their rates? Mm-hmm. And because everyone is using dynamic pricing now, or at least most groups are, just by looking at the website and seeing how they're pricing different units, like I can see what the price per square foot is on a 5x10 versus 10x20. And the differentiation in those rates gives me an idea of the demand for that specific unit size in that market. So we spent a lot of time just trying to figure that out.
Is there a particular data machine that you guys all subscribe to?
There's a couple different ones. We use there's a Yardi is one, Radius Plus is another one. And then we get a lot of data from the competitors as well.
Mm-hmm.
Just going online now because the websites and everything's so functionally sound.
Yeah, it's you can't really see the occupancy there, but you can see how much. And we've been in the space long enough that I know how different groups price.
Yeah.
So Extra Space Storage, for example, is known to significantly discount when they have some vacancy. So if they've got a massive web discounts, I know that there's vacancy in that area. There's other groups that hold their rates the same for extended periods of time and don't change the rates that much. So I can look at that and be like, okay, that's probably where the stabilized rates are going to be.
Okay, interesting. Yeah.
And then a lot, again, calling people we know in those markets and a lot of just sharing of information and what's going well. Like no one wants me to come in and build a bunch of 5x5s next to them when all their 5x5s are vacant, right? Like there's advantages to sharing information about where the demand is in a specific market.
So you're in California, Arizona,
Nevada, and New Mexico.
And New Mexico.
Yeah. And we want to do more in the Pacific Northwest. Haven't found the right opportunity up there yet.
Sell us like you would equity partners in general. What are your returns right now? Like, what are you kind of seeing? What are cap rates doing? That would just give us a kind of a blanket understanding.
Oh, cap rates are all over the map. So we don't use cap rates. It's an indicator that everybody's familiar with. So we have to use it.
It's part of the deal, but it's not the main focus.
We're doing a lot of value add deals. So we can buy something at a very low cap rate because we know that there's revenue growth. So one of the big things that happened in the storage industry in 2019 to 2020, COVID ended up being like one of the best things that ever happened to the storage industry. It got really challenging for a while, but it created so much demand. And one of the things that creates demand for storage is like uncertainty and change, right? Like people are using it because they're moving or they're cleaning out the garage and they're making a bedroom into an office space. Or moving out of their office spaces.
The ADU play has been huge.
Yeah. All those things created this crazy demand. So we saw revenues spike like year over year, like 20 to 25% from 2020 to 21 and 22.
So your dynamic pricing ran the rates up.
Pricing kept going up because demand was just through the roof. Like we would normally operate at like 92% occupancy. Everything was like 99. Like you couldn't like create the space fast enough for people to move in.
Unreal.
So now post that, we're seeing revenue decline, or like asking rents and stuff decline a little bit, but it's still well above where it was. So if I'm buying something where it's more of a mom and pop operator who didn't see that run up, it didn't experience that, or they maybe kept with their consistent 5% increases year over year, there's a lot of upside in those deals. So that's where the cap rate starts to not necessarily reflect the opportunity.
Right.
So getting to the metrics, when we started the business, and when I started the business, I had a business partner with an operating company. We ran it together for about 5 years. And then he was older and just kind of didn't have that same drive to keep growing the business. So that's where we separated in 2021. We still have a number of assets together, but the kind of second version of Frontera doing solo. So, but when we did that first group, there were still cap rates were higher and there was still opportunities for cash on cash returns. So everything was a cash on cash driven. We were targeting 7% cash on cash returns. Okay. Most of those deals we've achieved 10 to 15 just because of the growth we've seen. But really in 2020, 2021, that shifted. That's when more institutional money came into the space, and actually probably started in 2019, where we weren't finding those deals because the newer money was IRR driven. So by necessity, we shifted our business plan to be more multiple and IRR driven and less long-term holds, more short-term holds. So our strategy more recently has been buy these deals that are undermanaged, mismanaged, or there's something we can do by bringing some capital improvements to it to increase the revenue. And then we're looking at more of a 3 to 5 year hold. And those we're targeting. We target in our underwriting, which I think is usually conservative, like a mid to high teen IRR on most of those deals.
Okay.
Hoping that we outperform that.
Okay. And then, so do you still use a cap rate then in this case?
So we have to have an exit cap, right? Like that's the only way we set that, right?
So it would be your conservative exit cap.
Yeah, market to market a little bit, but usually in the high 5s to 6 cap range. And I mean, it's at one point
you're selling it relatively stable.
Yeah, and less upside, and that's going to be a factor of interest rates. If interest rates come down, I think we'll be back in the high 4 to 5% cap rate. I don't think we'll get back to the 3 caps on stabilized assets we saw
Yeah.
But getting something in like the 4.5 to 5.5 range, I think is realistic in the next few years.
Yeah.
To our
Yeah. We're seeing some meat on the bone, some value add, quote unquote, left on a deal. You might dip below a 5 still in a major metro. But then as you go more and more stable, lesser quality metro, towards a 6 cap.
Yeah, that makes sense. And we always kind of trail a little bit. Like our cap rates are always slightly higher than multifamily on a stabilized, because multifamily, again, most people are familiar with it. They're willing, they feel more comfortable. So we always have a little bit of a spread there. So yeah, it sounds like pretty similar.
Interesting. Okay. So then, it kind of dawned on us 5 to 10 years ago that if we were ever going to build mobile home parks, the places like California would be the best because you have the best demand and you can sell the homes.
The inventory.
So in our space,
is a big piece.
I just want to chat construction, but I'll share with you kind of our thoughts on construction for mobile home parks. We have friends building brand new mobile home parks in Texas. The ones specifically I'm talking about are in Dallas Metropolitan, DFW. And their issue, though, is absorption of units at that newer $150,000 price point. It's just a lot of money when you add the space rent, which out there is $1,000 plus, $1,000 to $1,400. And so we've dabbled, but then it's like, well, if you're going to do it, you should do it in a place that has the economics and the
median home price,
extreme supply constraint to your point. So what you said holds true for us is if you're going to build, you go into that higher median income location. That's really challenging to get entitlements. And then once you get through, you can sell and or lease and in a pretty quick amount of time.
Yeah. Cause out here you could sell a brand new mobile home for $200,000 to $400,000, which is very inexpensive in this part of the world.
Sure.
But when you go in other cities, it's too much. And then the lending's challenging and it just doesn't make sense. So yeah, if we could do it in El Cajon or somewhere in San Diego, I think it would make a lot of sense for us to do it. One day we'll find the land.
And then, again, then you can mitigate some of the risks with regulation, stuff like that based on your basis. And I think that's the way we look at it. It's like we can, our business plan just looks different when we're buying in New Mexico than when it is when we're buying in California.
Totally.
But once you understand the space, you can find those opportunities.
Right.
Yep. Do you like Phoenix or Dallas?
I do not. Specifically because of the supply.
So there are lots
and how it's easier to build.
In Texas, especially, I stay out of. To give you an example, I used to track all the markets we were even thinking about on the new product. And I remember at one point in San Diego County, there was something like 22 storage properties in planning. And I think only half of those got built. At that same time in Dallas, there were 78 and almost all of them got built. So it's just a different, it's a different animal.
That swings your needle on your pro forma for supply dramatically.
Huge.
Yeah.
And then,
that's a totally different animal because storage, for whatever reason, it seems like it's easier to get through than like even multi, so that's an interesting thing. I didn't realize they built so much of it though.
Yeah. Well, and then another great example of something that kind of turned me on to this issue is we were looking at, when I was at the private equity shop, we were looking at potentially funding other developers on these deals for some storage deals. And we had 3 properties brought to us in Austin, or all around the same time, all within like a quarter mile of each other. And all 3 of them told us that they were the only one building in that submarket. But because there's less access to information there, they weren't aware of it. So we're looking at these and we're under NDA and all of us, we can't tell them necessarily what's going on, but it's like, no thanks, right? And because you can build so quickly there, you may not know that someone else is coming right out of the ground. Where, again, I'll use Napa as an example because that's the one that we're most actively working right now. I know that there's 2 other projects in planning there. I know where they are. I know how long they've been working on them. I know when they're likely to open. And I know that we've got to jumpstart anyone else that it's going to be a couple of years for another property to be able to come up behind it. Right. Just because that entitlement process takes so long in California and you have public access to that information, I can not only pull title to see what people paid for the land, what their debt looks like, and I can go on the city websites and see the plans that they're submitting, right? So I have a really good feel for what that supply is that's coming, and you lose that in most areas of Texas, and Phoenix is along those lines. I still like some areas in Arizona, like I like Tucson as a market.
Interesting.
It has slightly different barriers.
Yep.
But Phoenix is a market we've intentionally avoided.
So you wouldn't recommend we buy storage assets around our mobile home parks in Phoenix?
The right strategy can work, right? I mean, there's pockets. And if you're looking at self-storage, you're looking at that 2, 3, 4 mile radius. So I'm saying Phoenix as a whole is a market, but there's probably an area within Phoenix that I would buy a property.
Well, and there's like a lot of brand new apartment communities that have gone in certain downtown areas, and it might make sense if there was like, one within a 1 or 2 mile radius from a bunch of brand new apartment communities. Those people might use that storage space for overflow for things that they just don't have room for. Yeah.
I've been saying that I'm avoiding Phoenix for the past 8-9 years. A lot of people have made a lot of money developing storage in Phoenix during that time period, right? Mm-hmm. But that's not my strategy. That's just it's a different animal with a different risk profile than what we're going after. So not to say you can't or shouldn't do it. You just need to think about it. There's more due diligence necessary, in my opinion, to make sure that makes sense.
And probably you have to buy on simple numbers, going back to like no aggressive assumptions and just cash on cash.
Yeah, you're
out the gate, kind of hedge on everything.
And I think that's where people have hit some home runs out there is you go into be like, okay, I need to use lower rent growth. I need to think about new supply coming in. If that doesn't happen in your submarket during your hold period and you go to sell it, you can have the rent growth that's off the charts and you can have a very successful investment. So again, it's all just kind of that approach.
Yeah. And the supply constraint focus though is a key for us as well, and it sounds like it's a huge blessing for us, listening to you talk about like you're managing the risk by looking at supply, and then multifamily does the same thing. And those markets have experienced a ton of multi growth. So yeah, I just know that the cities themselves are continuing to grow like crazy, but there's those, ebb and flows of the market as the population grows. They're going to absorb the housing, but that does impact rates for the short term, 3 to 5 years probably.
Yeah. Well, and then the other thing we haven't really talked about is we raise equity for these deals. Yeah. Right. So I've pitched my investors on a strategy that we're pursuing. If I pivot that strategy substantially, there's a whole nother education piece. Like, this is what hey, I remember I told you that we didn't want to do this before. Well, now we're going to do it, but this is why, and getting people comfortable with that. And we have a lot of our investor base is comfortable investing in storage in California. When we did our deal in New Mexico, I saw that opportunity. I loved the deal. We had an extended due diligence period on it. I think it's going to be a very successful investment for us. Probably the hardest deal I've ever had to actually raise the equity for, because people didn't fully understand it or didn't want to invest in another state. Or, I mean, even like when it comes to taxes and tax returns and things like that, there were some hurdles. So that was a very challenging thing for us to do. So if we're going to pivot and do a new market, there's a preemptively like educating people on what we're doing and why we're doing it, and talking to our investors ahead of that is something that's really important.
Otherwise, it's just like an uphill battle to raise them.
I
could have the uncertainty of a new market and just not knowing.
We'd have a hard time raising money for deals in California. Funny enough.
Yeah, we probably would.
Because of the residential regulatory issues. Yeah. And people are like getting sour to that, There's
definitely like groups, right? I know people that will not invest in California, and I know people that will only invest in California. Yeah. And they both have decent rationale for it, but it's just different mindsets and different risk profiles.
Well, and different ways to structure deals and put deals together. Yeah, it makes sense, or it doesn't in certain markets.
And I think multi in San Diego, in good submarkets, let's say, is going to do really well.
I agree.
And but you're probably not going to get like into the teens, on like the IRR, but you're going to have really good cash flow because cap rates are pretty stable.
And your occupancy is going to, can be consistent.
And as someone who's not from San Diego, there's a lot of good reasons to live here, and there's always going to be people moving here.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, so when you build brand new storage facilities, do you guys hire GC and the whole crew? So like it's you guys are pretty a skeleton development shop versus we
run very
GC.
Lean in-house. We hire experts for everything, right? Like because different projects, different locations. I want to bring on the best team for that project. I've had considered for a little while, just because I have a construction background. I understand it, even though it's not what I do every day. Doesn't make sense to like own or build or have a construction company. And every time I've thought about it, it's just like, that's not our bread and butter. And
Yeah.
even management. So when I started, we were self-managing everything.
How many doors? Actually, I keep forgetting to ask you. So roughly, how many units? How many dollars total assets under management, or something?
Yeah. So we have 15 properties right now with 3 in escrow.
Cool.
It's about 250 million in assets under management.
Cool.
Good for you.
Congrats, dude.
I couldn't even
That's
tell you the doors. We don't really pay attention to that. We look at square footage.
Okay.
So because we can change
What's
the
the
unit
total
mixes.
square footage then?
If I say I know the square footage, I should know it, right? Our average property is about 80,000 feet.
Okay.
I think we have, it's over 1 million square feet. I don't know the exact number right now.
Cool. Yeah.
It's one of those things I used to track so closely and I used to know those numbers off. And now it's we're doing so many different things that you kind of lose track of that. So I actually have a cheat sheet on my wall next to me because that's a question that comes up and I quickly reference
you gotta
it.
have it. Yeah.
No,
So we were going to get into property management, but then you kind of straight away.
When I originally started Frontera with my business partner, he had a management company. Part of our deal was I was going to run the management company for a salary while we built out Frontera because going into development, you don't make money for a few years, right? So I needed to be able to help the family. My wife was phenomenal during that time. She had a good paying job and supported us. And I would have had a very difficult time taking that initial step without having my wife's income and her willingness to support that, bringing the health insurance, all those things you don't necessarily think of right away. So I ran the management company for about 5 years. And what ends up happening for us is we became a little bit of a victim of our own success. And we did more deals. We had to bring on more employees.
Yeah.
And that takes up more time. And then I've got less time to spend on new deals, which is where we really make money. Mm-hmm. It also made it harder to get into new markets. Like if I want to do something like we bought a property in Bakersfield, I can't be driving up there all the time. So we needed to hire a third-party management company. And then we can be a little bit more hands-off. We still go to the site. We still actively oversee what's happening there, but we don't have to be the day-to-day.
Well, you asset manage instead of property manage. Which,
is there good third-party?
There are now. And that was part of the issue that 10 years ago, there were not good third parties, but that's been one of the big shifts, which has allowed the institutional money to come in.
Yeah.
Is now we have really solid third-party management companies.
Yeah.
We still don't. Yeah. I mean, we do, but we don't. It's like you could find a city-specific crew, but if you want to go big and allocate a lot, we're looking at some deals that are institutionally owned or whatever, institutionally backed operators, and they bought a ton, and we drove some of them, and it's like, guys, what are you doing? I feel like they have so much in the management companies that management, you can't keep it all together.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, now it gets tricky. So I knew we were kind of going the direction of going third-party management, but the early days of COVID is what really kind of pushed me over the edge because we were considered a essential business. Yeah. So we were open.
Yep.
We had 30 some employees, and I was waking up every day at 4 a.m. to read the regulations because it was changing daily, right? When can you open? What do you have to be doing? I got burnt out of trying to figure that out and shifting it, and different people have different comfort levels of different things. And you have your employees, you're part of your job as an employer is you have to protect your employees as well. And it just got to be a lot. And I was finally this is not where I want to be spending my time on a day-to-day basis. And my quality of life skyrocketed when we moved to more third-party management.
Cool.
More time with your kids and doing stuff. And you get to focus on really what makes more money and what you enjoy.
Exactly. Yeah. I enjoy the development. I enjoy the acquisitions. Yeah. The management was more of a means to an end, and to be able to move away from that was very helpful.
Yeah. I've heard it called a loss leader too. That you just end up burning some money, but it gives you the sharp data that allows you to.
There were a lot of advantages, right? There's some things that we missed, but we get a lot of that data from the third parties we operate. We use, and
totally.
There's certain aspects that you start to lose a little bit of control. That just kind of comes with it, and you can plan around it. But overall, I'm happy with that decision. But there's still certain assets that were more involved in the management than others, depending on what the business plan is.
So where are you headed? What's your kind of end goal, or 5-year, 10-year? What are you looking to do?
There's still a lot of opportunity to scale in our business. I think that we're going to continue to grow the platform. I think we're likely at some point to go back to more long-term holds. But again, that's going to be more market driven. And our business plan has always been about taking advantage of inefficiencies in the market, and that shifts over time, right? So right now, the high interest rates have created some hardships for some people where we can go in and find a good opportunity, and there's a win-win by us taking over and them having an exit. And I think that the institutional money that's coming to the space is going to stay for a little while. I think we're likely to look for some strategic partnerships to grow the platform. But I don't know. I don't have like a goal to own a certain number of properties or anything like that, right? For me, the doing the deal is fun, and I'm sure you've experienced this. One of the greatest things is like when you can cut a check to your investors and like when you lock in a win, either exit or refi and things like that. Like that's fun, right? Especially I brought a lot of like friends and family along with these deals with us, and I will say your examples. My dad invested in a property about 4 years ago with us for the first time, and he'd never invested in real estate. And he was the biggest pain in the ass investor because he has so many questions. He had me talk to his dad? His dad. I had to like pitch his financial advisor, and if it was a good idea, like he put me through it for a relatively small investment.
You learned a few things to answering all his questions, I bet. Yeah.
So and he was like, "Are you sure you know what you're doing?"
Yeah.
I was like, "Well, a lot of other people trust me with their money." So
yeah.
But
you should too, Dad. Yeah.
15 years.
But when I gave him that first, like when he got the first cash flow check, or it was when he got the distribution from a refi, I can't repeat the words that he said, but it was kind of like, holy crap. Like, like is this real? I was like, he's like, and I still own it and I still get cash flow.
Oh, that's the beauty of
like
real
that
estate.
was fun, right? Like, like helping him understand that. And So
do you guys do that when you buy and you own it for 3 to 5 years? Do you do and execute exchanges for like the investors that are involved, or do you just sell and cash out?
It depends. We never promise we're going to do a 1031 because I think sometimes people make bad decisions when they feel like they have to place that money.
Sure.
So we always pitch it as these are what your returns are going to be and before or after taxes. If we can place it and we can find a good opportunity and we can find a tax strategy that makes sense, we'll absolutely execute it.
Sure.
But don't count on it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times you have to move all the investors together, and investors have different time frames and schedules. So I think the biggest thing that we're focused on is whatever our strategy is going to be when we start, that's what we're going to keep as. We're not going to turn a short term to a long term hold, or vice versa. But there's a lot of tax benefits to it. I mean, we don't have quite as many tax benefits as you guys get, but like the bonus depreciation is big in our space.
Okay.
We can do some 1031s, but it just kind of depends. It's a deal by deal analysis,
and probably depending on the location and the rent growth, and if it's a value add opportunity. I mean, there's variables, kind of all that structure.
We've learned a lot about that, and our investor crew has always really liked to not have to deal with the gain or the recapture on the depreciation just because we're so depreciation heavy.
Yeah.
So we basically do an exchange, but that's what's cool about constantly buying is it's now we're building that pipeline to where if we don't have anything for sale and we don't have a 1031, we just raise the new money. But if we do have, then we'll just do tenant and common ownership for a couple of years and both bring in that old money from the 1031, but in a deal that we were going to buy anyways.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's not like you're running around, because we have a few deals we're going to clean up this year where we're going to make a couple bucks on them, but we bought them in 2021. So like we were at peak pricing. Yeah. And they weren't the quality assets that we'd love to own long term, and we just kind of had to sit down in chairs in the the musical chairs time frame. Yep. So we're gonna start grooming, but now we have that deal machine rolling on the front end to where we either raise new capital or we can decide to sell. A couple of cool things with the institutions is they can typically close pretty fast, or the shops that are backed by institutions. And so we're using that now, to where like they'll close in 45 days and then I'll tailor the whole transaction. I'll let everyone know that, hey, we're bolting on a 1031. But I'd say that it's been something that you could consider. And we're always a phone call away. We have all the people to do the tenant and common stuff. It's helped.
I think that's something that's coming for us. We've only sold a couple of assets because, again, the first 4 or 5 years of business was all long-term holds. Mm-hmm. So we really started the 3 to 5 year strategy about 4 years ago. So we just have our first couple of assets that we're going to be selling this year, and we've got a handful that are going to be next year. And so that's going to be
the treadmill.
Something. It's going to start to. We're going to have more of those turns in the next 12, 24 months. I mean, somewhat depending on the market conditions, interest rates, things like that. But I think that we'll probably have 3 or 4 exits in the next call it 18 months.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that will create those. I mean, it's a problem, but it's also an opportunity. It's
Totally.
a way we can redeploy it. We can find some new investment opportunities.
Yeah.
Or we could just lock in and people will pay taxes, but there's also like,
you still
lazy
you're getting that money back, and then you can decide what you want to do with it from there. And some of our investors want that, right? Like a lot of our investors are younger, and the shorter term holds is more wealth creation, whereas you get to the long term is more wealth preservation. So some of these guys just want that money back. Like their family might be growing. They're happy they've doubled their money. They'll pay some taxes, but they may need it because they're going to go do whatever, get a bigger house or anything like that. So
yeah.
Totally. No, that's cool. Well, it's been a pleasure to get to know you a little bit, talk shop, and we appreciate you coming out and talking and sharing, kind of being an open book on storage and your story. So thanks.
Yeah, it's been fun. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, congrats on your success, man. I'm stoked for you.
Yeah.
Wish you the best in the future.
Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for joining us for another CashFlow Quest episode. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.
Cheers.